Well, kiss me blarney stones. Yeah, that was horrible. I'm not going to do that anymore. Look, folks, I am the Mighty Plantain, and we've got a variety pack from Guinness here. This is their Brewer's Collection. Now, two of these beers are new to me. I'm not sure how long they've been producing them, but as far as I know, they're fairly new stateside. What we've got in here, we've got their Dublin Porter, a West Indies Porter, as well as regular Guinness Draught and the Guinness Foreign Extra Stout, which I believe is what they actually serve in Ireland. We just get the less stout version of their stout here in the States usually. So I am going to do them in the same order I named them because I think that's probably the best bet. We'll put the porters before the stouts, and we'll put the heavier stout at the end. I may be right or wrong depending on how hoppy these porters are, and I do see some notes on them, tasting notes, saying that they are, one of them's a little bit hoppy. So we'll see how that turns out, because typically you want to put your hoppier beers towards the end, but I don't think that they're going to be hoppier than the stouts are stouty, if that makes any sense to some of you, which to some of you it will, I'm sure. But yeah, I think I'm going to stick with the darker beers at the end on this one. But before we get into the Brewer's Collection, I'm going to give you a bonus. This is the Guinness Rye Pale Ale from their Brewer's Project. And it says here it's an aromatic amber ale brewed with rye malt. Go figure, in the name. So we're going to hit this one first and see how this turns out. As always, using the Sam Adams Perfect Pint glass. It's not the perfect glass for every beer, but it's pretty damn good for most beers. So rather than switching it up and getting 5 or 6 different glasses going, I'm just going to stick with the perfect pint glass most of the time. And it does have a good way of enhancing some of the aromas and flavors just because of the way it's designed for the Sam Adams. Now this is a little cloudy, and it's actually more yellow than I would have thought a rye beer would be. I would have thought it would be a darker brown, but this is almost it's a very cloudy, it's an interesting color. I almost think there's some pinkish notes here where it's thicker in the glass. It might be throwing it off, but it's definitely like a dirty blonde, light brown. Quite effervescent. Very, very effervescent. Lots of bubbles coming up through there. That's interesting. I mean, you definitely smell the rye, like a nice loaf of rye bread. That's hitting you pretty heavy with that. A bit yeasty, honestly, in the aroma. I don't always pick up on a general yeastiness in the aroma, but I am getting that from this one. That might be the cloudiness. Maybe it's unfiltered and there's a lot of yeast still in there. Doesn't say anything about whether it's unfiltered or not. But anyway, getting a bit of yeastiness and a bit of an overall hoppy bitterness. Maybe some slight notes of citrus in there. Got a nice medium light mouthfeel. A little toasty. And continuing with the trend of flavor from the rye, it's like a nice toasted piece of rye bread. A slight bit of those yeasty notes still coming through in the flavor. It's less obvious than it is in the aroma, though. And a slightly citrusy, hoppy finish. And that's a very pleasant, easy drinking beer, and it's got a very complex flavor profile. And this is one I could sit around and drink all day in almost any kind of weather. Honestly, it's a bit light and crisp. And it's got that medium light mouthfeel. So it's got a little bit of a body to it, but it's crisp enough and I think nice and cool enough that it's actually really making me think of a nice, easy drinking summer beer. But at the same time, I can also picture this as being a nice fall or winter beer, and then of course spring, just because it's got enough of a heavy taste, not a heavy mouthfeel, but a heavy taste, and enough robust toastiness in that taste that I can associate it with a nice winter beer. So this is a nice year-round beer. Honestly, the fact that there's no real standout flavors. There's nothing that's really making me go, wow. So I don't really want to push this up to a perfect 5 out of 5, but the fact that I'm thinking it's so versatile and I can imagine drinking this any time of year and enjoying it, and it's so easy drinking, and it does have some complexity to the flavor. Complexity to the flavor. I want to give this a 4.5 out of 5. Not quite ready, like I said, to push it up to the perfect 5 out of 5, but this is an excellent, excellent beer. It's just not giving me that wow factor. But otherwise, I really can't find anything I don't like about it. So I'm going to finish this up, and then I'm going to move on to the Dublin Porter. Alright, so now we are going to get into the Brewer's Collection 12 pack, and we're going to start, like I said, with the Dublin Porter. Let's see here. Not a whole lot of information on it, just some minor tasting notes. That's okay, I'll taste it for myself. Now that is a little darker. Definitely a porter, nice and brown, and somewhat less effervescent. I didn't get much of a head on that one. I didn't do a good job of pouring that. But what I did see for a split second there was actually one of those little drops that dances on the top of the beer, and I love that. I love seeing that. Pay attention when you pour out a darker beer or a heavier beer. Every now and then this little drop will separate itself from the rest of it, and it just kind of dances around on the top of the top of your pour before settling into the head, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful and it's awesome. You get more of them with the heavier and darker the beer is. So there is still a little bit of light coming through that. It is definitely a porter. Very, very brown, but also bordering on black. It's got a lighter color to the head than I'm used to seeing from a porter. I'm used to seeing more of a brownish head. This has got a whitish tinge to it, or gray. It makes me think more of the kind of head I would see on a stout. I can't really tell if it's very effervescent, but I don't think it is at all, because there's not very many bubbles coming up through and rejuvenating the pathetic head that I put on that, and it's already started to fade pretty much to nothing. So toasty and a little smoky. Definitely a heavily malted beer. Yeah, just toasty and a little smoky in the aroma. A bit of a medium mouthfeel. Pretty smooth, but there's an unusual bite to the end of it. Not getting any particular flavor in that bite, but it's like as soon as you swallow, you get like this cool crispness coming up on the palate. That's the way I think to describe it, is biting, but there's no flavor associated with it. It's a nice toasty flavor. Like I said, heavily malted. It's just got that medium mouthfeel. Pretty smooth. Not a lot of particular flavor notes coming through. Maybe a little bit of sweetness. The smoky, toasty, and sweet. Little hint of sweetness there. Pretty decent overall. Nothing standing out hugely for me on this one. Oh, pardon. I gotta put this as a 3 out of 5. Now bear in mind, on a 1 to 5 scale, 2.5 is average. So this is an above average beer. It's just not really putting anything forward that that's really sticking with me. Whew, got the hiccups apparently after only 2 beers. It's going to be a rough night if I can't get rid of those. But yeah, a good beer overall. Just nothing that's really standing out for me with it. So a solid 3 out of 5 above average. I'm going to finish this off. We're going to move on to the West Indies Porter. Alright, it is time for the West Indies Porter from Guinness. We'll find out what this one's all about. Don't want to get too aggressive with that glugging, but I do want to give it a little bit of a kick at the end. Got a bit of a better head on that one than the last porter. Still not great, but that's more what I expect from a porter, as a brownish tan head versus the grayish white that I was getting from this one. Still a pretty weak head, not looking very effervescent. It's actually darker than the Dublin Porter. There's less light coming through there, so it is closer to black than brown. Not getting much off the aroma of that one. Very, very neutral. Maybe just a bit of crispness? Freshness and crispness. Almost like a fresh rain. But overall, not much in the aroma. Interesting. Again, a very medium mouthfeel. Slightly tangy, actually, and a little bit hoppy in the finish. Maybe pine notes. Just very slightly tangy and a little piney in the finish. Overall, a medium mouthfeel, quite smooth beer. Again, nothing really standing out. The flavors are very much more muted in this than they were in the Dublin Porter. I'm not really getting much off of this one. Just that slight tang and maybe a little bit of hoppiness in the finish. I'm going to hit this with a 2.5 out of 5. That puts it at a very average rating. 1 to 5 scale, 2.5 is average. It's a very average beer. It's smooth and it's easy to drink. But nothing at all standing out from it for me. Just even the slight flavor notes that I am picking up on are very, very muted. So it's not doing much for me overall, but it's not a bad beer. It's just not a great beer. It's a good beer. It's nice and solid. So I'm going to finish it up, and we'll move on to some more well-known beers here with the Guinness Draught and the Guinness fForeign Extra Stout. Looking forward to those. Couple of favorites. Guinness Draught. If you're watching this video, hell, if you've watched any of my videos, you know what to expect from this. Just like me, it was probably your first stout. I mean, it's widely available. It's an imported draft. It's actually brewed in America. I think this one was brewed overseas and brought over, maybe? Oh, this one was brewed in Dublin. But the vast majority of Guinness Draught that you'll get is actually brewed in the U.S. and distributed by a major distributor, but it was probably your first stout. Was it? Let me know. Hit me up down in the comments, the email link down below. Let's talk about it. Because honestly, it is the most widely available and accepted stout in America, I think. I don't have the stats to back me up on that, but come on. It's gotta be. Everybody knows Guinness. Whether you love it or hate it, you know it. And it is very dark, very smooth, very creamy. Look at that head. Got a decent head on it without even trying too hard. And it is black as black. I mean, there's just maybe a little bit of light coming in there, and a tinge of brown at the edges of the glass. But it's got that nice, thick, creamy head with the small bubbles. It doesn't even have a nitro widget in this particular bottle. I know some of your Guinness bottles will have the nitro widget. It's a rocket widget, and it's really weird looking. I wish I had one to show you, but I don't know if they bottle this with nitro in it or not, but it doesn't matter. It's still a very smooth and creamy beer without the nitro. I mean, a draft pour in any U.S. bar is going to get you that same nice creamy head, and some of the bartenders are actually getting to the point where they can make designs in it. The Shamrock, the most popular, but you know. Not getting much in the aroma. Oh, but that is a nice, thick beer. I got family members who tell me they don't know how I can drink this stuff when I'm out and about at the bars. And how do you order that? It's like drinking motor oil. You know what? I don't care. It's a thick, dark, heavy, delicious beer. Now, I've had a lot of stouts since I started drinking the Guinness, and I gotta say, it's not a standout other than the nostalgia factor that it was my first stout. It introduced me to the world of dark beers. There are no particular flavor notes that come through that really impress me anymore, and I hate to say that about such a mainstay as Guinness. But it is what every stout should be. It is a dark, heavy beer. It's got a heavy mouthfeel, and it's got some character to it. Being as heavy and dark as it is still very smooth. It's got a lot of roasted notes, obviously, from the malt. And they really use a lot of darkly roasted malt, and it is good. It is good, good, good. Because of the nostalgia factor and the fact that it introduced me to the world of dark beers, let's call it a gateway beer. I gotta give the Guinness a 3.5 out of 5. Quite a bit above average, but in this day and age, with so many stouts on the market, Guinness doesn't really jump forward and impress me, but it is everything that a good stout should be without getting crazy. So, highly above average, just for being like a standard and a measuring stick for me. Although I wouldn't necessarily call it a perfectly balanced stout, because I do like some other characteristics from my stouts. I like some chocolate, some coffee, some really strong roasted notes, or a heavier mouthfeel, something you really got to chew before you swallow. But, again, 3.5 out of 5, definitely highly above average. Just for being a great damn stout. So I'm going to finish this up, obviously a little quicker than the others went, because it's going down really easy. And then I'm going to move on to the Guinness fForeign Extra Stout. Well, as I predicted, that didn't take long to finish off, so we're moving on to the Guinness fForeign Extra Stout. Let's get this bad boy opened up. Now, because it's an export, it did start out with more hops than your regular Guinness. Hops were originally added to most beers, and this is where we get the IPA from, by the way, as a preservative for long sea voyages. India Pale Ale is a beer that was exported from India to the New World. Extra hops added to preserve the beer, and then we get the distinctive hoppy flavor of an IPA. A little bit of beer trivia for you, but you know what? Like I said, if you're watching this video or on my channel at all, you probably already knew that. Got a decent pour on it. Somewhat of a decent head. Doesn't look very effervescent. It's got that nice brown head to it. This is darker than the Guinness Draught. There is no light coming through that bad boy at all. And there's not even a tinge of brown at the edge of the glass. Not even down here where it's thin. There is zero light. This beer is opaque. And I like that. Getting some roasted notes. Mildly hoppy in the finish. On the tail end of the aroma. Not the finish, because I haven't drank it yet. But not too overwhelming. It's very, very subtle. Oh, that's a stout you gotta chew. It's got a nice heavy mouthfeel. Heavy roasted notes coming through. A mild bit of hoppy bitterness, maybe some citrusy, earthy. I don't know. It's got a tinge of sourness to it, but it's not quite citrusy. It's earthy for sure. Maybe the tang reminiscent of an imperial stout. It's not quite high enough in ABV to be an imperial stout, but it's got that little bit of a tang of the high ABV that's reminiscent of it without being unpleasant. But I think that's just a combination of the really roasted notes from the malt and a bit of the citrus coming through and complementing the earthy notes from the hops. It's quite good. Quite good, quite good, quite good. I'm going to give this another 4 out of 5. Just because I'm loving the complexity of the taste and the heaviness and full-bodied stout. So there you have it. Not a single loser among any of these beers. And a really solid 4 in this 12-pack. You get 3 of each, but don't forget this Rye Pale Ale is separate. It's available in 6 packs, but I figured I'd throw it in with this video just to give you a nice little bonus. But the Brewer's collection and the Brewer's project looks like they're producing some really good stuff. Ooh, pardon, from Guinness. Not that I'm that surprised. Solid brewery, solid beers. Love the lineup. You know, they also produce Harp Lager, the Guinness Nitro IPA was really good. Blonde Ale was kind of a miss for me for Guinness, and their Black Lager was more, it seemed to me, an attempt to turn the Guinness Stout into something that appealed to a wider audience, and the Black Lager was another miss for me. I would put it on the par with average beers, nice and drinkable, but nothing that really stood out. So the brewery's putting out some really good stuff. This 12-pack's worth checking out. The Rye Pale Ale's worth checking out. Make sure you hit them up. Like to hear what you have to say about the beers. Hit me up down below in the comments and emailing. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my assessment or any thoughts you have on these beers. Let me know if you think I should have lined them up differently or if I did a good job with that. While you're down there, make sure to hit me up with a like and a share and subscribe so that you'll get a notification every time I post a new video. Till next time, folks, thanks for tuning in. Cheers. Now, a little while back, we did a bit of a comparison with the Not Your Father's Hard Root Beer review.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for the beer, man. So, highly recommended by you. The Extreme Beer Fest this weekend. We'll be able to get a hold of, I believe it's the American